Hello, this week I'm going to be talking about form. Unfortunately, form isn't the most interesting of topics in poetry, but it's important to understanding poetry properly. So I'm going to try my best to give you a rough idea of some of the key ones and not bore you senseless. So apologies if this isn't the most fascinating vlog I'll ever give you. Basic place to start with form in poetry is looking at the metre, beat, rhythm and forms in general. Your metre is your rhyming structure, which is fairly simple. It's the way in which things match each other. You all know what rhyme means. Your beat is where your syllables fall, so syllables. I'm sure everyone remembers doing that awful exercise in GCSE English. And your rhythm is the flow of the words themselves. Most common and most well-known form of metre is your iambic pentameter. So the iambic bit is the da 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 da. Your pentameter is that it's 5. It's 5 of your D-dums in one sentence. This is used in the heroic verse, which is an old traditional one, which is rhyming couplets in an iambic pentameter, and that's it. It's just that repeated over and over and over and over and over again, and is fairly old-fashioned and not very often found anymore, although Simon Armitage does play with it in an interesting way, and it's worth having a little look at that. You also have an ode, which again is a very old form. It's a poem with a kind of lyrical musical feel to it, written about one subject in particular. That's all it is, so don't panic when someone says to you, oh, odes are interesting, aren't they, because they're fairly simple. Your ballad is a little bit more complicated. Again, it's an older form. It's alternating lines of 4 and 3 beats, usually with an A-B rhyming pattern. But I wouldn't personally worry about them too much. You don't tend to find them lying around anymore. Interesting if you're studying some older stuff, but not really relevant to today's poetry. Villanelles and sestinas are really stupidly complicated forms. They are confusing, they are tangly, they are very good fun to play with, and if you really want to challenge yourself in poetry, it's well worth looking up how to do them properly and having a bit of a play. I will post links for you guys to a couple of really, really good examples, one of a sestina and one of a villanelle. I'm going to talk about the most common form of poem that people have heard of, and that's your sonnet. Now, most people have heard of, a lot of us will have studied, with mixed results, the Shakespearean sonnet, which is 14 lines of the A-B rhyming pattern, and then finishing with 2 lines that are a couplet. They tend to be contained within themselves. They might fit into a series, but they don't tend to be about 20 different subjects. It tends to be an individual subject that is looked at. It's very often written in iambic pentameter, that first thing I talked to you about. People often use that because it fits the sonnet form very well. It gives it a nice flow, it's nice and comfortable to talk in. And the other 2 I will mention to you briefly are the haiku, which is very simple. It's 3 lines written with 5 syllables, 7 syllables, and then 5 syllables. Very quick, very fun. You can write some really silly but quite beautiful poems in the haiku form. And Diamante is my final poem form, which is where you literally make it look like a diamond. It's very pretty, it's very nice, but you often take one thing and halfway through the poem turn it into its opposite. So you might start the poem talking about wolves and end with the word lamb. So you kind of subvert what you're talking about into another form. One thing I forgot to mention earlier, your stanzas. Now when someone says, oh, this has got 30 stanzas in it, all that means is it's got basically 30 verses. It's the same idea as a song where you've got your verse. In poetry, you just call it a stanza. It's nothing more complicated or fancy than that. I'm not going to go into much more detail. In fact, I'm not going to go into any more detail because it gets very complicated, gets very silly, and it gets a bit absurd, as the English language tends to. But if you want to know any more particularly about the form of the poem, I can't recommend highly enough Stephen Fry's The Ode Less Travelled. It's very funny, it's very clear, he talks about things very slowly, very much in detail. It's a very, very useful guide. Now, I know the things I've talked about this week might cause a little bit of confusion, or people might want to know more. If you do, just let me know in the comments. I'll find out for you, or I can tell you myself anything you want to know. And that's about it for this session. So please like, subscribe and share, and I'll see you next time on Talking Poetry.